And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and as always, it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday. And again, before we get into the show, I just want to remind you guys to get your comments recognized, donations and tips to the show. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. And for bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network. So now that we got that in, let's talk about what we have on tap for today's show. So obviously, to start off the show, we'll go through the latest news and headlines around the league. Then in the next two segments, we will recap the American League Wildcard Series as well as the National League Wildcard Series. And then in the final segment, we'll talk about what teams that had first-round byes are on upset alert going into the LDSs this weekend. And the big thing is we got no games today. None. Every series was wrapped up yesterday. So, I was kind of hoping that we were going to maybe, have a Game 3 to talk about, but that is not the case. We have no games today, and we have no games tomorrow. However, I do have some news regarding myself. So, obviously, been doing this podcast for about a little over a month now. Coming out with content 5 days a week. But starting next week, that will not be the case. For this podcast specifically, I will be doing the shows once a week on Friday. However, I will be starting the GSMC football podcast show, basically covering the NFL. That will be starting next week, so that'll be 5 days a week. That'll be the same time. For this show, like I said, it will be on Fridays. It'll be shortly after I do the football shows and the Patreon. But, so going forward, that's how that's going to be. And but I will continue to do the social posts for this show every single day, so those will keep being a thing. But this show will now be 1 day a week, and I will be doing the NFL show for 5 days next week. So that's there's kind of some shuffling going around, but that was just wanted to make that known. So that's what this show is going to be going forward. But that's for next week. So we got the show today and tomorrow, same time, and then next week this show will be on every Friday, every single Friday, so in the afternoon. But yeah, so I'm really excited about that. So let's get into the show now. So let's get into the latest news and headlines around the league. Let's get into some baseball stuff. So obviously, like I said, we got no Game 3s. Nothing. No games for 2 days now. And I think one of the main topics here, again, is once again, the Minnesota Twins. Because, and I got to give them some love too, because I really didn't give them a chance in this series because of the history. Because they have not, they were on, 18 game losing streak, when it came to the postseason. Hadn't moved on since 2002 in the postseason, and they got it done yesterday, defeating the Blue Jays 2-0. I mean, Target Field has been incredible. The crowd has been into it both games, and the Twins, they got it done against the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays just could not do anything yesterday offensively. They had things going for them, but they just could not cash in. And their season ends in a very disappointing fashion. And there's a couple of things to unpack with that game. Obviously, Jose Barrios getting taken out of the game early, and that ended up being the difference in the game. And we've seen that numerous times in the playoffs over the course of the last couple of years, several years really, of managers just taking out their starter and trying to act like the smartest guy in the room, and it ends up backfiring. I mean, I've seen that with my own team. We've seen that during the COVID year in the World Series. We'll get into the more specifics with that, but that's just one thing to talk about when coming out of that game is, listen, obviously when it comes to the postseason, urgency, is prominent. If you see your pitcher struggling, and your first instinct is I got to take him out and get to my bullpen because we got our backs against the wall, and especially because it's an elimination game. But sometimes that stuff does backfire, and we saw that yesterday. And like I said, we've seen that countless times over the last several years. I mean, there's 2 instances that were during the COVID season. But like I said, I want to get into more of that when we get into this second segment, which is talking about, obviously, the American League side of things. But, yeah, the Twins, they moved on. The Phillies, obviously, they swept the Marlins. Diamondbacks, they swept the Brewers. They were all sweeps. Rangers swept the Rays. The Rays, again, another depressing October for them. Quick October for them. They got knocked down the wild card round last year, and they got knocked out again. They just couldn't get anything going offensively. I mean, I had the Rays in the. I got the National League side of things correct. I just didn't get the. I didn't get anything right in the American League. The Rangers swept the Rays, and the Blue Jays got swept by the Twins. I mean, listen, if you're the Blue Jays, listen, you're the team that ended the Twins' losing streak in the playoffs. And you know what? Got to give the Twins a lot of credit. They pitched very well in this in these 2 games. Sonny Gray pitched well. Pablo Lopez pitched well. So, that's very encouraging for them. And obviously, there's a different feel with this Twins team. And again, obviously, I didn't give them a chance because it's the Twins, and they played in the weakest division in baseball. And I really just was like, hey, I really don't think. I think the Blue Jays are a better team. I thought that the Blue Jays were ultimately going to be the ones that moved on, but that wasn't the case. And the Twins, they got Carlos Correa now. Royce Lewis, their rookie, he was responsible for them winning Game 1 with his 2 home runs. So, listen, it's a different Twins team. But I also just think it's more so just the Blue Jays, in big moments, they just crumble under the pressure. The pitching, held up, but the offense did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. And, I made sure to check out, some of the fan pages on social media, and it weren't a lot of nice things. They were calling for a lot of people to be fired and, basically, tear it down and rebuild. I mean, people have had it with the Blue Jays. But because you look at this team, and how are they not, last year I picked them to go to the World Series because of how loaded they were. And they just have not got it done. They have been a major disappointment these last couple of seasons. And you know what? Their starting pitching is very good. Their pitching in general is very good. It's just the offense is what held them back this year. So, but good for the Twins. The Rays, the same thing. Another disappointing year for them. 99 wins in the regular season. They got off to that. I honestly forgot about that. Getting off to that 13-0 start. It looked like they were going to run away with the AL East, and then they had their collapse, and the Orioles ended up surpassing them, and they got knocked out in 2 games against the Rangers. And you know what? I disrespected Texas. I disrespected them, and I disrespected the Twins. Texas really has a good lineup. They have a great blend of young players and veterans. And those young players showed out yesterday. Nathan Eovaldi and Jordan Montgomery both pitched well, and those are their top 2 starters right now when you got injuries to your other pitchers in your rotation. And their bullpen in these 2 games have done their job as well. So, and Texas got a really good lineup. They have a very good lineup. It's just, for me, going into the postseason with, injuries to your starting staff and how you finished off the season, like I said yesterday, choking the American League West to the Astros, I really didn't like, and the Rays were coming in hot. But that, again, listen, I say it's all about momentum, but that series, in that case, momentum had nothing to do with it. The Rays were coming in hot, Rangers weren't, and Rangers walked away with the series win, 2-game sweep. And listen, I I kind of gave the Rays the benefit of the doubt. I was talking about like, hey, the Tropicana Field does, get a decent amount of fans for the playoffs, but not for these two games. Not for these two games at all. There were a lot of empty seats. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I didn't expect the Rays to go far. I really didn't. I didn't, because this happens every year with them, and it happened again. I thought they would at least get to the next round, but no, they're gone. They were gone in 2 games. That was it. Only put up 1 run in 2 games. And then, on the National League side of things, of course, Diamondbacks, were down early against the Brewers, but they came back and they won. And they're an exciting team too. They got good pitching. They got, good young players. Corbin Carroll, again, he's gotten off to a good start in this postseason. And the Brewers, it's the same story. They don't hit in the postseason, and that's why they're going home. Peralta pitched well, but they just how did Peralta pitch? Well, I thought he was. We'll go back to it. They scored 4 runs in the 6th inning. I don't know if I think he got taken out by then. But let's look. Let's look again. But we'll talk about this more, throughout the show. He pitched. He got into the 5th inning, and that's that's when he got taken out. So he was pitching good for a while, but then in the 5th and 6th inning, that's kind of when it all fell apart. But again, the Brewers just didn't score again, and I think that's a team when you look at that and you say that team might have to tear it down. Might have to, because they're not. It doesn't seem like they're going to win anything with this core. So we'll see. And then of course the Phillies, you had them defeating the Marlins 7-1. We'll get into more of that, but listen, I said it. The Phillies were the much better team, and Aaron Nola pitched well. We got the good Aaron Nola, but yeah, it's unfortunate for the Marlins. They ran into a much better team, but yeah, the Phillies were the much better team, and they got the great home field advantage, and that showed out yesterday. But we'll get into that later in the show. But other minor things, so Bob Melvin and the general manager for the Padres, I think, right, AJ Preller, yep. They will both be coming back for 2024. So, yeah, they're going to run it. The Padres are going to run it back. They're trying to extend Juan Soto, so we'll see how that all goes. I mean, he could get traded in the offseason. I don't know, but we'll make sure to talk about it. But they're both coming back. I think the Padres are going to run it back. Run it back, see what happens, and if they don't do good next year, then I think you got to tear it down. The Diamondbacks also extended their general manager, Mike Hazen. I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, so that's just minor stuff there when it comes to headlines. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it when it comes to the headlines. Obviously, we'll get more into the games in the next 2 segments, and then the final segment's going to be fun, talking about what teams could be upset in this division series, because I think we could see some upsets. I really do. So, but yeah, that'll be the final part of the show when we get to that. But yeah, it's just kind of stinks we got no game 3s, because I was gonna hold off till tomorrow to talk about the series for this weekend, but yeah. I mean, tomorrow's show is going to be interesting because it's kind of like the first day where it's like, yeah, there wasn't any baseball the previous day. So, I mean, I kind of have an idea of how the show will go. I mean, I could definitely, dedicate, one segment to the American League, one segment to the National League. Obviously start off the show with talking about, the latest news and stuff, but yeah, we'll have to figure it out. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the first part of the show. So when we come back from our first break, we are going to recap the American League wild card, and talk about both games and give my overall thoughts on that. So stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.